We are live
Happy
on
Goddess Chat.
on the YouTube.
On the
On
YouTube.
the Yeah, that's what we've been
Okay.
calling it, the YouTubes.
YouTubes. Nice. Welcome, goddesses. We are grateful to be with you today. We are going to have a two for today. We're going to talk about this week's altar making, as well as next week's tools, as we will be taking a little sabbatical next week. So I'm going to pass it over to Paige and let her lead us off here.
Yeah, thank you. I was just looking at my notes, and today we'll be talking about our altar to Saraswati or Saraswati.
Mm-hmm.
She's the goddess of knowledge and mastery.
Yes.
And if you look at the images that are most representative of her, well, she has 4 arms. That's kind of distinctive because she's mastering a lot of and balancing a lot of things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And one you will find is she's holding a stringed instrument. And it's, I can't remember the name. I should remember. I think it's called
Guitar.
it was, or a Veet, something
Oh,
like
okay.
that. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's like a sitar. And that is representative of those, of harmony and, just those strings being in tune and creating that music. And that's, so it's representative of music and harmony, being in tune. And then we have a book, and that would be the Vedas in their tradition. However, I would choose just any book that really represents knowledge to you. Maybe there's a book that you have that you've really learned something about yourself, about the goddess, about whatever, that's been a profound experience for you. I definitely want to include in my altar something in the yogic tradition, probably the sutras or that sort of thing. Then we have, my phone just got, beads, a string of beads, a mala.
Yeah.
And that's depicting discipline and concentration, meditation. And that is one of the aspects of Saraswati. And she's depicted as wearing white. And there is a white lotus in her image. And that is representing purity and knowledge as well. And also, which I thought was interesting, the need to remain untouched by negative influences. So that's something to think about. And then a peacock. She's often shown with the peacock in the image. And that, it represents beauty and dance. But as we know, peacocks can be kind of vain in their display. Or it could represent vanity or even indecision. And so it's a reminder that we might want to curb those undesirable qualities. So for your altar, I suggested on our Facebook page, and I'll say it again here, you want to have some kind of representation of music or art. Maybe you have a stringed instrument or an instrument of some sort that you play or you'd like to play. Some art that you've made, a white cloth, white lotus, peacock feather, a book that would represent knowledge to you, and mala beads. I think most everybody has a few of those things that they can incorporate. So I just kind of had to laugh when it came to the violin or the stringed instrument. I think of my learning how to play the violin. And when you talk about mastery, I was really not able to master that very well. And because I really didn't practice, but in my infinite hours of watching others play, I knew how you were supposed to look when you were playing it. So
Mhm.
I was often put in the front of the orchestra because I looked like I knew what I was doing. But
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
goddess knows what sound was coming out of that instrument.
That's great. Well, I think it's important to remember that even though these goddesses represent very specific things, that if there's something that you're working at mastering, that should go onto your altar as well. So, like,
Mhm.
if you're really putting efforts into a specific direction in your life, this is a great place to help you come and commune with the goddess Saraswati to support you in remaining focused on mastering whatever it is that you are exploring. So it's not necessarily just artistic endeavors or musical endeavors. It's also anything that you're feeling like you want to integrate yourself into learning and knowing and then being able to express that into the world. um,
Mhm.
so,
Mhm.
these altars are really intended to help us sit down and call upon that help, ask for that support from the divine feminine energy that is represented by each of the goddesses that we are discussing. Because we have manifesting powers to help us all along the way, but it's always good to lean into spirit and ask for that
Right.
support.
Right. Perfect. Perfect. So, kind of moving in from the altar to the tools, we always, I don't say always, but we emphasize journaling as
Mhm.
being one of the best ways to integrate with and work with the goddess. But
And to
I,
help you surface from within
well,
yourself what's
right. And I was just reading out of one of our books some questions, and this totally represents me. Uh, and so I'll read it if it's okay.
Mhm.
Are you someone who begins things with great enthusiasm, but when you realize the scope of the situation, you move on to something else?
Mm.
Could it be you're dealing with someone like this, or you are that person? Ambivalence is something to be careful of at this time, as you recognize you need more knowledge and energy than what you have to move forward competently. So the goddess Saraswati reminds you that there are no shortcuts on this journey, and partial knowledge does not make you a master.
Mm.
In fact, your alignment task is to stop working in a scattered way. It's time for some deep diving into the subject of your inquiry to really get command of the terrain. So
Yeah.
I think that's a marvelous thing to journal about is uh, you do a deep dive
Mhm.
and or whatever it is you were talking about in the altar making. What is it that you're wanting to master? What is calling to you? And it, sometimes I'm that person that wants to jump in and do it. This sounds really great. And then when it gets like, oh, this is going to take some time, or like the
It
violin,
takes
I'm going to
effort,
have to
right?
practice.
Yeah.
It takes some
Yeah.
effort, right? Uh, so for me, I'm going to sit down and write, what is it about this that now is holding me back? Why do I not want to put in that effort anymore? Often it's because I don't think I can do it.
Mhm. Mhm.
Or who am I to do this? And that's going to be a really interesting inquiry for me.
Mhm.
And
Well, and I have to share, I'm currently on a journey with my body that I've been on for several weeks now. And this past weekend, I fell not well, so I ended up kind of falling off the focal point from where I was early last week, and I'm noticing after about 4 days of, I mean, obviously when you're not feeling good, you just kind of like, I don't have the bandwidth to think about anything, so I'm just going to keep it real simple. And so that simplicity then kind of throws out the window all of the very focused and regimented practices I had in place before I needed to take the pause. And so over the last 24 hours, as I'm starting to come out of that fuzziness and not feeling well, I'm going, okay, it's time to reset. It's time to reset, because the old behavior, old paradigm for me was, once I broke it, it was broken. Like, okay, whatever. And then I had to like really work myself back to it. And I'm really taking an effort this month. And I do believe that it's because we're working with Saraswati that I'm in this query and I'm in this awareness for myself that I don't want to let it go 2-3 weeks from now. Like I have a focal point. I have a reason that I'm doing what I'm doing. And so even though physically I may not be able to exercise the way I was exercising a week ago just yet, like I'm giving myself a couple more days to reset that. I'm like, okay, let's make sure that we're doing right with our food, and let's make sure that we're, eating within the time frames that we had set up. Excuse me. Just to get myself back in line with my intention. And so this is the practice of mastering something. Is just because you take a right turn doesn't mean that you are completely off course. It just means you're taking a parallel path, and you're going to find your way back by taking that left turn eventually back onto the road that you were on. So being gentle with ourselves is important through this process, especially when we're learning and practicing something.
It's okay to make mistakes.
Yeah, exactly. And the excuse me, the Hindu goddesses that we are gifted to work with, they are associated in some way with yoga, and yoga's teachings is that it's all about practice, right? And that you may show up one day and feel like you could take on the world, and maybe the next day you need to lay on the floor and just take a restorative practice. So it's about showing up. It's not about who you are when you show up. It's about showing up. And that mastery comes from self exploration and inviting yourself into these practices with intention. So, I really invite you to observe how Saraswati can work with you in any new beginning, any new creation, any new practice that you are exploring, because it's all applicable, right? It's about being present with what we used to do versus where we're going, and not in a judgmental way, more in a self-exploratory, okay, how can I really bring this in and really live this fully?
Absolutely.
So with that, I hope we have given you some ideas and inspirations and explorations for yourself. And we would love to hear about your experience with Saraswati. We'd love to see your altars, anything that you're doing. Please share it. We will be we'll be off next Wednesday, so we won't be sharing another goddess chat until 2 weeks from now. But we look forward to seeing you then, and
absolutely
wish you a beautiful rest of the week.